Hello everyone, it is January 17th of 2024 and my name is Tom Hogan. Welcome to Trackside with Tom. This is our weekly forum where we talk about happenings on the various railroads, things that have happened on steel highway webcams, and I know what everyone wants to talk about today. I'm not confused about it. And I'm prepared to devote the entire program to the event at Rutledge last Friday. So, hello to everyone that's chimed in the chat here already. We've got Jim M, Daniel Swanson, Alan Hunt, Santa Fe Man, A-Train. Hello everyone, good to see you all. Now, before we get into the actual program, I'm going to put a couple of disclaimers out here to start out with. Okay? So, the first thing is, let's keep in mind, everybody, that every train that we see go by a camera has a crew on it. And those trains and the crews on those trains are out here just trying to do a job. They are trying to make a living, put food on the table, pay their mortgage, pay for their car, everything else. So this is why, because I spent a lot of time this weekend debating with myself and with others whether or not to post this video. Ultimately, I did post it, and I disabled the commentary, and I disabled the monetization. The reason I disabled the commentary was because I did not want the peanut gallery coming in here and second-guessing everything that the crew did in the course of operating this train. And that's not what I'm here to do today either. Please understand, I'm not here to tell you I would have done this differently, I would have done it better, I never would have stalled the train. None of that. That's not what I'm trying to say at all. So please don't misunderstand me. Second thing is that in a philosophical sense, I refuse to profit off of the misfortune of others. This crew went through something that no train crew should ever have to deal with. And although I have the video out here, and I have it here so that people can get the full story of what really happened, I also want to make sure that everyone knows that I'm not trying to profit off of this. I have it out here for informational purposes only. So, having said all that, we are now going to get into the video. So this is Friday, January 12th, 1500. And we have a northbound CPKC train that is approaching the Ottumwa CPKC camera. For those of you that are not familiar with the area in Ottumwa, they leave the yard in Ottumwa, they go over the Des Moines River, they go over a diamond with the bnsf, which also at one time there was a diamond with the Rock Island there as well, but that's long gone. And then they start up a 1.6% grade for 2.5 miles until they get to the top of the hill, which is called Rutledge Siding. Thus the name also, Rutledge Hill. Now, as we start this, I've got a full page of notes here to share with you guys. So let's just get this started. The first thing that I notice immediately is just the sheer amount of snow that this crew, or the train, the plow is pushing out of the way. So to give you an idea, the rail is 7 inches tall by itself, and then the snow looks like it could be another 6 to 9 inches above the top of the rail. So we're dealing with at least a foot of snow that they're pushing their way through here. And as they push that snow, it also packs it down some too in between the rails. Which in DC it can create issues with traction motors, but it's that's not so much the case here. Just something that something I'm pointing out. And looking at the comments, the crossing is called Caldwell Street. That's where we're located. This is Caldwell Street. It's the first crossing to the north of the diamond where the CPK, it's about 2,000 feet north of the diamond where the CPKC crosses BNSF. So, we've got the head end going by. I'm going to turn this down a little bit. We've got the block of Muscatines here on the head end. All these 4-bay hoppers are going to Muscatine most likely. Now, I think this is also worth pointing out too. You see the guy that's wading through the snow over here. He's wading through like a foot to a foot and a half of snow. It looks like it's almost up to his knees. So just another indication of how bad things are out here. Yes, hello Buddy Burton, hello Wolf River Rat, Steve McMillan, Garrett Henderson, Minecrafter Tracy, Joseph Lewis. Alright, here's our UTLX tank cars. Those are probably going to Union Tank in Muscatine to be repaired. The box cars are going to Heinz in Muscatine. Ketchup, mustard, relish, another UTLX. Now we're getting into our St. Paul block. CP System hoppers. And we've got this KCS auto rack. KCS articulated auto rack. We're going to pay real close attention to this because it's coming back to us. This is line 25 on his train. By my estimation, we've seen about 1,575 feet of train go by at this point. And as he continues, you can tell they're already starting to lose speed. This load of pipe, and you've got more of these 4-bay hoppers, boxcar. I'm pretty confident this is all a St. Paul block that we're seeing go by now. Cliff McFerrin, hello from West Liberty. Good to see you. All right, now, we just heard a tone-up. That tone-up is from the BNSF dispatcher. We have both radio channels programmed in here, so the CPKC and the BNSF dispatchers can both be heard. And as we continue along here, we should hear the BNSF dispatcher answer the radio here pretty quickly. Okay, so this is also critically important. The dispatcher responds to the crew. The crew is far enough out that we can't, on the BNSF train, that we cannot hear him yet. This is the BNSF 5946 West. I don't know for sure. My best guess is that it's an empty coal train, but I could be totally wrong. 5946 is an AC 4400. Pretty common to be seen in coal service, so I'm speculating here. The BNSF Ottumwa camera, or the server for the BNSF Ottumwa camera, was being replaced, so we do not have footage from the BNSF side for this day. However, you heard him call he asked the dispatcher about a light at the diamond, and the dispatcher responds that the CPKC northbound is pulling across the diamond. He said that he looks like he's almost clear, and that he is gonna get him a lineup. He should have a light as soon as that train clears. Now, what this means is that the dispatcher has done what's called stacking in a signal for the BNSF. You see this very commonly when trains are making a meet on a siding, all right? Train is sitting on the siding waiting for a meet. Train goes by in the other direction, and as soon as that train clears in the opposite direction, the switch points flip over, and then the signal pops in right away. Yes, ES44AC, most common type of engine assigned to coal trains on BNSF. Yes, thank you. And that's pretty much what I was saying. It was an EMASATM. Got it. All right. So thanks for the clarification there, guys. Now, in this case, this is an interlocking, right? There's no switch. So one train clears, the diamond or the interlocker does what's called running time, which it just times itself out for a certain number of seconds. And then once it finishes running time, then they line up a train in a different direction. In this case, you had the northbound line to cross. He clears the diamond, the plant runs time, and then the westbound gets lined up because it's his turn to go. If the dispatcher had not stacked in that signal, this probably would have turned out very, very differently. So I'm just going to point that out. It's very, very fortunate that the dispatcher had the foresight to stack in that signal and keep his train moving. If they had to stop and then start back up again, this whole scenario would have turned out very, very differently. The reason he dialed up the dispatcher is probably because he went by an approach on the intermediate east of Ottumwa, and he said, "Oh, I wonder if we need to stop outside town. Are we waiting on the CP? Are we lined up?" And so they dialed up the dispatcher to get that information. They know they're supposed to be getting a light, so they keep rolling into town. So thank goodness that the dispatcher had that signal stacked in that they were able to just keep moving. So we can see now we got these DOWX, that's Dow Chemicals, and they are, and the video refresh just hit, but they are pulling by. They've lost quite a bit of speed now. These Dow Chemical cars, I believe those go to St. Paul as well. I believe that's a pretty big customer that the Canadian Pacific has up in Minnesota, is Dow Chemical. CCBX, I am not as familiar with that, but I do know that there's a couple more DOWX hoppers coming. Quite often hear westbounds asking the dispatcher that question when they get an approach around agency. Yep, same question, right? That's a set of crossovers instead of a diamond, but it's the same basic question is, are we lined up or do we need to hold back? Yes, that's exactly what they're asking. Hello, Garrett Henderson. Hello, Stephen Kern. Nice to see you guys. ES44AC, sorry. AC4400, ES44AC. I apologize. Yes, that sort of distinction matters. Now, we can see here, train is grinding down to a halt. He's just about stalled out. And this DOWX 66982, that's the last car that's going to make it up to the camera. Now, as he stops, at some point here, you can actually hear him setting the All right, so they roll back a little bit, but you can actually hear the click, 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 click as the train brakes are setting up. So he knows he's stalled. And what's happening now is the slack is adjusting a little bit. And there, he has actually toned up the dispatcher to tell him that, hey, we're stalled. So this is the first time he's tried to tone up the dispatcher. It's 15:04. And he is toning up the dispatcher. Now, at this point, we have seen approximately 3,228 feet of train go past the camera. This is actually line 54 on this train. So we have, my best guess, we have about a 5,000 foot train. On paper, he probably had enough horsepower, even if they're all loads, to get up the hill. But when you consider the amount of snow they were pushing out of the way, the fact that the rails are cold, and you take all this into consideration, the weather outside, the conditions that they're operating in, yeah, they didn't make it up the hill. Because as you're pushing more and more snow out of the way, especially if you hit like a bigger drift, it really is just like adding more trailing tonnage from the perspective of horsepower, that you have to overcompensate for that. So the slack is adjusting, the train rolls back a little bit, maybe about half a car or so, which is pretty much what I would expect for slack adjustment. Over the course of a 5,000, 6,000 foot train, you can easily have a half car of slack, especially when you go to stop. If the engineer uses the independent to stop, that's going to, the head end of the train will bunch up a little bit and then it'll roll back a little bit. And now we're at 15:05 and we're just about settled here. And now the train, a little bit more adjustment. But at this point, the slack is adjusted, the train has come to a rest. And this is 15:05:46 right now. So this is the point where I would say that he's got it stopped, he's got it under control. They know that they've stalled. They've tried to contact the dispatcher hasn't answered yet. And so now they're sitting here on the side of the hill waiting to talk to the dispatcher. If he's got his counter knowing, he probably knows that he cleared the diamond already. But at the same time, they're dead in the water. So while we're waiting for this, dispatcher, John Bulio, yes, dispatcher is not allowed by rules to tell a train what signal to expect. That's right. They just say, hey, go down there and look for the signal. Yep. And so now we're starting to see this roll back a little further. And this is the point where I would say that, yeah, it rolls back a little bit further. But watching this is more than what I would consider just normal slack adjustment. And what you're going to see is, as we go along here, the train is just going to keep sliding back a little more, sliding back a little more, sliding back a little more as we progress along here. All right, so now he's toned up the dispatcher for a second time. And still waiting for a response. I don't think that the response time of the dispatcher here was in any way an issue. It's just that they know that they need to get a hold of the dispatcher. They know that they probably need to start making a plan to double the hill, get part of their train up to Rutledge, and then come back for the rest of it. A lot of DOWX hoppers on the UP Albert Lee sub, yes. And yes, BNSF took over MRL on New Year's Day. Yep, they took the lease back. CN also bought the Iowa Northern beginning of December. Yep, all of that happened, and that's it's all news, but it's yeah, not what we're really here to talk about today. So honestly, you know, as we're sitting here and watching this, the train hasn't moved. You know, they rolled back a little bit, standard slack adjustment, and we're just waiting for the rest of this to unfold. But I think that it's worth noting also that from the time that the train stopped, which was 15:06, until they had the emergency tone up with the dispatcher at 15:09, almost 15:10, there was not enough time. Those 5 minutes for the conductor to get back from the head end and start winding on handbrakes. All right, so there's a third tone up. And they're still waiting for the dispatcher to respond. But the point that I would make is that there really was not enough time for the conductor to get back there and start winding on handbrakes. And quite honestly, even if he had, it wasn't going to make or break this operation. He only had about 5 minutes between when the train stopped and when it started rolling back. And then additionally, they didn't really have any reason to believe that the brakes wouldn't hold. You put a full application on there. Was there a rear DPU? No, there was no rear DPU. Dispatcher has a lot of territory that's covered. That's right. He's doing track warrants from Pingree, which is right outside of Chicago, all the way down to, Laredo right now. Eventually, they'll have most of that. All right. So the dispatcher they did the emergency tone-up, which is different from the regular tone-up. And the dispatcher comes on and he says, answering a Rutledge emergency radio. So the dispatcher knows that he has to come in here and talk to him. Now, you say the train is not moving. Why are we not seeing the train move? If he hit that emergency dispatcher, how does he know that his train is moving? You can also, if you listen carefully when the engineer is talking, you can hear that dee-oo in the background. I'm pretty sure that that's the Fred on the head end telling him, the Mary that's on the head end in the locomotive, telling him that there's movement on the Fred. So the Fred is the flashing rear end device, and it's down there, and if it starts moving, you can see that on the head end, even if you don't have a DPU. So he can see that the rear of his train is moving, but again, there may be some slack bunched up in there, and it hasn't started rolling back yet in front of the camera. It's going to take a couple more minutes before you actually see it here, because it's kind of a slow process, right? So the CP dispatcher is going over to call the BNSF dispatcher and let him know what's going on. In the meantime, pretty quickly here, we're going to hear the slack start to come out and see this train start to roll back once again. Yes. The slack adjustment happens, that's correct, right before the train starts to move again. Now, I'm going to throw out a little bit of analysis here. I don't know how long this train sat in the yard, but one of the things that I noticed was that as the train was rolling back, the wheels were all turning. If the full set of the brakes was effective on the wheels would have been sliding across the top of the rail instead of rolling. My guess is that while this train was sitting in the Ottumwa yard waiting for a recrew, it probably got snowed in. There was snow and ice blown in on the brake shoes, in between the brake shoes and the wheels. And so when the brake shoes went to apply, they aren't getting pushed all the way up against the wheel. And instead, there's not the brake shoe on the steel that's supposed to really hold it in place really effectively. Instead, you've got ice on the wheel, which allows the wheels to turn, and what we'll see when it starts rolling back is that you can actually see the snow on the wheels starting to turn. That's the other reason why I do think that this was an ice and snow buildup, because you can actually see all the way around the rim of the wheel that there's snow all the way around it. So that's kind of my working theory. The train sat in the yard. The brake rigging could have gotten frozen up, which would not allow it to set up fully. You have ice against the wheels, ice between the brake shoes and the brake wheel and the wheels that doesn't allow the brakes to set up effectively. And quite honestly, they could have had an unintentional release from the rear end also, especially with no DPU back there. So we're going to continue to watch this now. We're at 15:11, which means that in just a little bit here, I'm going to turn this up. And I know that you're getting a lot of bell out of this. But if you listen really closely in the background, you can actually hear right here, I believe what you can actually hear is the head end of the BNSF train that's going westbound across the diamond, because they do run moderately parallel but on opposite sides of a street through this area. And when you're sitting on this grade, you can look through the trees and you can see the BNSF double main off to your right, like if you're coming downhill. So I'm pretty sure that what you're hearing is the head end, which means that the head end of the BNSF is also about 2,000 feet, 2,500 feet, whatever it is, beyond the diamond. And they're probably pulling through there at track speed. So I'm going to turn this back down now. But at that timestamp, I'm pretty sure... All right, now we start... Oops, here. I wanted to actually... So you hear that, it's almost like a clicking sound, but what you're hearing is the slack getting pulled out. All right? So we know that the BNSF train is probably about halfway across the diamond right now, and we're hearing that click, click, click as the slack is starting to get pulled out of all these hopper cars. So there is about 2,000 feet or 1,900 feet from this camera down to the absolute signal at the diamond. And yes, it is 40 mph over the diamond. That's right. So you're hearing that slack roll out, and you're starting to see the train roll back. And at the point where we see him start to roll back, that's where we're going to start counting cars back the other way. But if you look closely here, you can see, even though he's got a full set on the brakes, the wheels are still turning. I'm going to turn this volume down some more. And he starts to roll out. It's pretty slow. Then they start to pick up speed. My guess is that pretty soon here, they're starting to feel a jerk on the head end. The head end is still 3,200 feet to the left of it. All right, so the dispatcher is asking the 251 or 261 crew, 251 crew, their dispatcher is asking if they're still rolling back. They're probably, based on the amount of slack that I've seen adjusted here, and the fact that we've rolled back almost 2 car lengths now, they're probably feeling this on the head end right about now. All right, so he's put the train into emergency. So that means that not only, so when you go to set your train brakes, you can go to minimum service, and then you have a range of number of pounds of air that you can set, and then you have a full set, and then after the full set, then you put it into emergency, which is literally putting all of the air pressure, it evacuates all the air pressure, and it puts a full set on the brakes. And it's basically trying to give you the maximum amount of stopping power that you can possibly achieve. All right, now the BNSF dispatcher is calling the 5946. Now at this point it's 12:45, so we are another minute after we heard the head end of that BNSF train go by the diamond, which means that, you know, he's got, if you figure out at 40 mph, if he's actually doing track speed, I haven't actually done the math on this before, but if you take 40 mph and you divide it by 60, that means that you're doing 0.67 miles per minute times 5280. So in a minute, at 40 mph, you can move 3,520 feet. So if his head end was there, standard coal train is around 6,000 feet. So when his head end went by, he was about 2,000 feet past the diamond. Now another minute's gone by, he's about 5,500 feet. He's really close, probably within 500 to 700 feet of actually clearing the diamond. So when he says running the light, the dispatcher is talking about the fact that the CPKC train has a red signal at the diamond. And if they roll back through that red signal, that's running the light. Now, clearly the train is out of control. It's not like the crew is intentionally saying we're just going to blast by here anyway, but that's what the dispatcher is referring to. And you see as he starts to roll back here, they do pick up quite a bit of speed as they're going downhill. Okay, so now the BNSF train is saying that they just cleared the diamond. And it is 15, 13, 20. Well, I have 24, but we're showing 25 up here. He's saying that he just cleared the diamond. All right. Now, the reason that's important is because they're operating with track warrant control. So their method of operation is track warrant control and ABS east of Ottumwa, and then it becomes CTC west of Ottumwa. And I also find it moderately amusing that they still refer to this as the IC&E railroad crossing when they issue and release track warrants, even though the IC&E has not existed since 2008 or 2009, one of the two. So he's rolling back now. Okay, so now the dispatcher is telling his crew, the BNSF 5946, that the CP crew just ran the light. Now, I don't know if that means that it happened while they were releasing the track warrant, or if it meant that he literally at that exact moment just ran the light. But think about this now. That means that at 15:13:24, the BNSF 5946 reports clear of the diamond. At 15:14:15, the dispatcher says they just ran the light, which means that they missed a collision here by between 40 and 50 seconds. And when I say a collision, yes, I realize that the signals are several car lengths out from the, out away from the diamond. But you have to remember, going by the diamond, especially downhill on a 1.6% grade, you're not going to get stopped in that 5 or 6 car lengths. You have no chance of getting stopped. And so under any circumstance, if you go by the diamond, it's very likely you're also going to foul the, if you go by the signal, you're also going to foul the diamond. And if we look here, we're going to see just how many car lengths go by. You're going to see just how many car lengths go by before they actually grind down to a stop. So it's 1, 2. You can hear the brakes starting to set now. 3. That's my favorite quote, by the way, of the whole exchange. We're coming back into the yard whether we like it or not. So you can hear the brakes starting to set up pretty hard. However, before they actually come to a stop, there's about 11 cars that go by. There's only 5 or 6 car lengths from the absolute signal down to the diamond. And here's our KCS auto rack again. And this is where he comes to a stop. So not only did he go by the signal, they went way over the interlocking as well. And they missed a collision with that BNSF train. Like I say, between 40 and 50 seconds, somewhere in that neighborhood, they missed the collision. So just to give you an idea of what was going on here. And the train at this point has rolled back almost 1,800 feet from where we saw that DOWX car, the 66982, to this KCS auto rack. He's rolled back around 1,800 feet at this point. So they're way past the signals, way past the diamond. Their train is down around the connection track that the BNSF, the rear of their train is down around the connection track somewhere where the BNSF comes off of the Ottumwa sub and turns to get into the CP yard with coal trains that they interchange for Muscatine Power and Water and the Fruitland Power Plant. So that's kind of just to give you a little bit of a ballpark of where the rear of his train would have landed in this scenario. There's no good scenario for the crew here. The crew has got to be scared out of their minds. The BNSF train, they don't know if they hit them or missed them at this point because they're already in emergency. And for their train to hit the rear of the BNSF train, they might not even feel that from 5,000 plus feet away. So they have no idea what happened here. All they know is that their train rolled back out of control in emergency. And at that point, there's nothing else the crew can do. There's literally nothing else that they can do to try to make this work or to stop the train. I can tell you, so I worked out of Nahant. I worked for the IC&E in the Canadian Pacific from 2006 until the beginning of 2014. And I took a lot of pool turns back and forth between Ottumwa and Nahant. You know, I've stalled on this hill. I've seen other people stall on this hill. I've definitely stalled on the hill and had to walk back through 2 feet of snow to set handbrakes and double to the Rutledge siding. And this is a situation where railroading in the winter sucks to begin with, and this just makes it 1,000 times worse. And so my sympathy is absolutely with the crew, with both crews in this situation, because the coal train crew, they had no idea if they were going to get the rear of their train smashed into. And the CP crew, they were just out of control. They did everything they could to try to stop the train, everything in their power, and they couldn't do anything else. So as we go on with this, I just want to make sure everybody's aware that this is it's just a bad situation all the way around. So this is where the crew actually knows. After their train has come to a complete stop, that's how they know that they actually missed the BNSF train. It's got to be a huge sigh of relief for that crew. Yeah, of course he's freaking out. So they're talking about now, they're going to talk about watching a shove and getting them put back away in the yard and getting a new crew on the train. So what they do is, and I'm not going to walk through the rest of this. It's actually already 12:45. We're getting pretty close to the end here. But basically, they talk to the BNSF dispatcher. They get talked through the interlocking, and then they shove their train the rest of the way back into the yard. And we'll skip ahead to here and actually watch them. And they're just... So I'm going to turn that off. And we're just watching him shove his train back toward the yard here. So to wrap all this up, this is literally one of the worst case scenarios for any crew to have to deal with. And I can't tell you how much I sympathize with the fact that this sucks for the crew. It sucks for the dispatchers to have to deal with. But ultimately, this is something that when you railroad in the winter, dumb things happen. And this is just one of 1,000 examples of bad things that can go wrong. So, you know, that they were very fortunate. A very close near miss in terms of making sure that the two trains didn't actually collide into each other. Because that would have been national news. That would have been, not exactly like East Palestine all over again, but it certainly would have been all over national news if something like that had happened. So thank goodness that was not the case. And congratulations to the crew for keeping their composure and doing everything that they could to try to mitigate the circumstances as bad as they were. As this train is rolling back and shoving back toward the yard, one thing you can notice also is how the slack adjusters and the couplers are just all, these cushion drawbars and the couplers are all just completely, they're pretty well stretched out as we're going back. And we're seeing the train just shove back slowly toward the yard. We will skip ahead a little bit here because he shoves back pretty slow. Certainly understandable. The power was CP8743 and also the CP, I feel like it was an 8800 series. There's the big beaver pelt logo. Oh, 8125. There we go. So, GE Power leading both trains on this day. And as he's going back now, we're just seeing him shove back toward the yard and putting his train away for the day. There was one question that somebody asked me about the timing of the audio versus what you're actually seeing on camera. It may have been offset by a couple of seconds, but the reason that he knows that the rear of his train is moving even though you don't see it in front of the camera is because the Fred is moving 1,000 feet away or 1,200 feet away, whatever it is. You can see the Fred moving on the Mary in the head end of the engine, on the engine on the head end. So that's why, even though it doesn't seem to line up real well, it does make sense. You just have to have a little bit of context into what's going on. But you can definitely see that when you're on the head end, you can definitely see it when the Fred is moving versus when it's stationary. So I'm sure that's what he was seeing and why he toned up the dispatcher when he did, even though we didn't see any movement at that moment in front of the camera. Yeah, I'll pull up a Google map view. That's a fair question. We're about 2,000 feet away from the diamond here. If I pull up maps and Ottumwa, Iowa, and I'll give you a little bit of context with exactly what we're looking at. So it's this area. The camera is over here at Caldwell Street, which is right in this area, right by this Casey's. And then you've got this whole thing, and then the signal. So the signal is right here. It's actually on the north or west side of 2nd Street. So when he goes by that signal, it's when he goes by that signal, that's where the dispatcher, the BNSF dispatcher, is telling you that that's when he blew by the signal. It's right in here. And if I go here, it might actually show me. I wonder how up to date is Google Maps. So we're standing here. This is West 2nd Street. And the CP is on the left. And the signal that protects the diamond is over here on the right. And as I pull up here a little bit closer, you'll be able to see this better. And so, here we go. So this is where the signal is. And then you can look down around this curve. It's about another, I don't know, it might be as much as 8 car lengths from the signal down to the diamond. The diamond is right in here where this signal box is. And it's just slightly obscured by this row of bushes right here. So, anyway, that's what you're looking at. My guess is that when he came to rest, his rear end was somewhere down in this area. Right about in here somewhere. Probably didn't make it all the way down to the bridge, but somewhere in the area of this connecting track off of the BNSF. Yes, the brick building is a former streetcar barn. That is absolutely right. Thank you for that little bit of trivia. Ottumwa Streetcar Company, or whatever, I forget what the exact name of it was. But that's this building right here. This is the former streetcar barn. Yep. So, all right, guys, we're going to wrap it up today. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I really wanted to spend some time and make sure that you guys understood what went on here, because this is such a unique situation. Hopefully, we never see it happen again. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And make sure and check out steel-highway.com. Have a good day.